Listen, this conversation is going to be crazy because this conversation is going to be crazy because I mean, I literally could not believe how brutal this conversation between Larry Elder and the Breakfast Club was. I just couldn't believe it. So let me just set this up for you. Larry Elder is not to be trifled with, okay? Larry Elder has been doing this stuff for decades. Larry Elder is a lawyer. He's 71 years old, right? He's a lawyer. He's smart. He's quick-witted. He is, I mean, all he does every single day is basically regurgitate facts, right? And apparently the people on the Breakfast Club wasn't ready for that. Apparently they didn't know who he was. They apparently had no idea that Larry Elder was that guy, okay? But they found out real quick. So let's pull up this video here. I'm not going to belabor the hour. I figure, hey, if you don't watch it with me live, you'll catch it on the replay. No worries. So let's bring this up here. And let's start this.
Wake that ass up early in the morning.
All right. First of all, let me get the audio right.
The Breakfast Club.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Charlemagne the God. We are the Breakfast Club. We have Teslin Figueroa with us, and we got a special guest in the building. 2024 Republican presidential candidate Larry Elder. Welcome, brother.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor.
How you feeling?
I feel good.
He does more than that, though. I mean, he was a radio host.
Radio host for 40 years.
Author, TV
40
author,
years.
New York Times best-selling list. I've got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Corner of Hollywood and Vine, southeast corner, just saying.
Okay.
I didn't know
Yeah,
you had a
just
star on the
saying.
Walk of Fame,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, about a handful of radio guys do, and I'm one of them.
Just
I think it's
saying.
You, Elvis Duran,
Angie
Howard
Martinez.
Stern,
Yeah.
Big Boy. Oh, Angie
Angie
Martinez.
A guy named Arthur Godfrey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just saying.
So let's jump right into it. Why are you running for president?
Well, I'm running as an America First mega guy, and we have an America First mega guy running, obviously. So the question is, what do you bring to the table?
All right, I just want to say this about Larry Elder and him running for president. Okay, he's got no shot of winning, okay? Let's just put that out there just for consideration. Larry Elder has no shot of winning this presidential campaign. However, I am glad he's running just for these moments right here. Let's continue.
Hey, MAGA.
MAGA.
Okay.
And the
MAGA.
answer is I bring a lot of issues to the table that I feel our side is not talking enough about, if at all. For example, the number one social problem in America by far is the epidemic not of COVID, but of fatherlessness. 70% of black kids today enter the world without a father in the home, married to the mother, up from 25% back in 1965. Now 25% of white kids enter the world today without a father in the home, married to the mother. And the stats are clear. Even Barack Obama once cited them. If you're raised without a dad, you're 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. What's happened? In the mid-'60s, with I think the best of intentions, a Democrat named Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. And since then, we have incentivized women to marry the government and incentivized men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. You know, when I say this to people, the pushback I get is, well, there are lots of things that are going on, systemic racism, poverty. Here's the problem. If you look at a young black male aged 10 to 43, that's young to me because I'm 71 years old. A young black man in that demo is 13 times more likely to be murdered than a young white man, same demo. Young black man, real young, 19 and under, the number one cause of preventable death is homicide, almost always at the hands of another young black male. Same demo for whites, the number one cause of preventable death is unintentional deaths. That includes drug overdoses, automobile accidents, drownings. It's not until they get to number 4 that death is the cause. In America, 60% of the shootings, the robberies, and the homicides are committed by black people, often against other black people. Of the homicides in this country, half of them are black victims, almost all killed by other blacks. How do you explain that if it isn't for the absence of fathers? Are you prepared to say black people are just genetically inclined to commit more crime? I doubt it. And the go-to reaction often is poverty and systemic racism. Here's the problem. 1940, when there was
Hang on, I'm just pausing right here because I just want you to note the tone and the tenor he is setting. He came out right out of the gate saying, listen, this is why I'm running for president. I'm a MAGA guy. I'm America First guy, but this is my distinction. I am running on the platform that we need to make sure that fathers are in the home, that the nuclear family is intact. We know for a fact that all the pathologies in communities in general, but in the black community in particular, right, because it's acute there, we know for a fact that these are the things that lead to the pathologies. This is the root of the problem, right? So he's not making it a racial thing, but he is pointing out the fact that fatherlessness in the black community is orders of magnitude higher than in other communities. And also, he's making the point that, well, you can't say it's systemic racism because for the reasons that he, I think, is going to lay out and has laid out, right? But that's the tone and the tenor, right? But to just watch, this is going to take a very sharp turn the wrong way, and Larry Elder is going to be forced to spank them. Let's listen.
Blatant racism. This is before Brown versus Board of Education, before the Civil Rights Act of '64. KKK was still alive and well. 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Now it's about 14%. You can't blame it on poverty. You can't blame it on racism. It is the breakdown of the nuclear intact family, and neither side is talking about it. The left doesn't talk about it because they caused it with the welfare state, and our side does not talk about it because if you're white, you'll be accused of dissing single moms who are heroically raising these kids, or you'll be accused of being a racist, or if you're black, you'll be accused, as I was by the LA Times, of being the black face of white supremacy.
All right, so let me just put some meat on that because he's making a bold claim. He's saying the left doesn't talk about it because they caused it, right? They, in many ways, through their policies, through their so-called war on poverty, which I'd have to say, I concur. I at least a good portion of the blame is based on that. But he also says, and this is a bona fide fact, that the reason why the right doesn't talk about it is because whenever the right tries to bring it up, then everyone shouts them down and says, oh, you know, the reason why there's fatherlessness in the black community is because of racism. And you just blaming the victims and blah, 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 right? Dan Patrick Moynihan, or was it Dan Patrick Moynihan? Is it, I don't know if it's Dan Patrick Moynihan, but his last name is Moynihan. There's a famous report called the Moynihan Report where, get this, he said that back in the 60s, where the single parent rate in the black community was like in the 20s, right? Some of the 20%. He said then it was an epidemic. He said then it was an epidemic. It's 70% now. So what do you call that? If 20% was, I tell you what, we would kill for 20% single parent rate in the black community, because that would be, I don't know, 2.5 times better than where we are now. You know what happened when he put that report out? They said it was racist. That's what they said. And then for decades, nobody brought it up again because no one wanted to be the next Moynihan. So these are facts. And notice Larry Elder, notice the factual nature of his comments. You're going to see the stark contrast with these other. I'm going to be nice to the Breakfast Club today, right? I normally call Charlemagne the God. I normally call him Charlemagne the Fraud, right? That's normally how I talk about him. But in any case, we'll keep it going.
Nobody's talking about that. I am.
What are the reasons, if your statistics are right, what are the reasons that you think fathers aren't in the home?
If his statistics
are
right. As I
said, it's because in the mid-'60s, Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. And Charlemagne, literally, they sent social workers door to door in the inner city. I remember this, advising women of the availability of welfare provided there was no man in the house. It created an economic incentive for women to marry the government. Same thing with whites.
Facts.
In 1965, 8% of whites entered the world without a father in the home married to the mother. Now it's about 25%, also up threefold. Look at census data, 1910, 1920, 1930, in places like Milwaukee, Chicago, Philadelphia, a young black kid was slightly more likely to be brought into a world with a father in the home married to the mother than a young white kid. We have incentivized this kind of bad behavior, and it's had a disproportionately bad effect on the black community.
Let me ask you a question. What do white people do wrong, Larry Elder?
What do you mean, what do white people do? I'm not worried about white people. I'm worried about what's going on with us.
But if there's systemic...
Okay, let me get Charlemagne the Fraud. Now I have to stop being nice. Now you see Charlemagne the fraud right off the bat, right off the bat. Instead of asking an intelligent question, he goes straight to the idiot well. Well, what about white people? This guy. First of all, if he was listening, he just said, now he wants to put it at the feet of white people, right? He wants to say it's white people and because this is the way these people think. But he just said, the war on poverty, that policy where they incentivize men to leave the home and to be dependent on the government, they created that incentive. I guess if you want to blame that on white people, I guess you could say that. But he was basically pointing out what the root of the problem is. And then Charlemagne the fraud immediately goes to the idiot well. Okay.
Racism in this country, which we know it is.
No, I don't say there is. You say there is. I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't believe this?
No, there used to be, obviously. Tell me what you think the number one systemic example of systemic racism is in America.
Okay, so this is a setup question because Larry Elder asked this question all the time. He's been asking this question for decades. And there ain't an answer that anyone can provide that he hadn't heard. So obviously they don't know who Larry Elder is.
Oh, man.
By the way, if they did, he would have been prepared for this question.
So
Just give me the most important one you think.
At the top of mind, I'd probably maybe say mass incarceration. Maybe.
Really? During the Great Depression, when 50% of black adults were unemployed, you didn't have this kind of mass incarceration. It's the breakdown of the family. There's a direct.
I'm not going to. I agree.
I just want to say this. I just want you to make note of how many times Larry Elder quotes facts and figures. 1950s, Great Depression, 50% here, this and that. He's using data, and then listen to how they talk.
Agree with the family part. I'm a black man who is a father to his children, and I'm a happily married black man to a black woman. So I'm never going to argue with that part, you know. But I just feel like everything is black with you. Black is wrong. Black people do this and black people do that. And when I ask you what white people do wrong, you said you're not worried about white people at all.
I'm talking about the damage, disproportionate damage going on in the black community. For example, look at these smash and grabs that are taking place in Los Angeles, where I live. There's a suburb called Glendale, where at a mall recently, a mob of 30 to 40 people, they had masks on, but one guy got popped. He was black. And I think most of those who were doing this were black. And in recent years and times, there have been a number of these in places like Chicago, places like New York. If I were involved in something like that, Charlemagne, I grew up with a dad, just as you're raising your own children. I would have been more afraid of my father than I would about the cops catching me. These kids are afraid of neither. They don't have a father in the home. Cops are demoralized. They're pulling back. Their manpower is short. And as a result, you tell a bad guy you're less likely to be caught, convicted, incarcerated, crime goes up. They may be criminals, but they're not stupid. When you say, what do white people do? I mean, this is a country that has struggled mightily to get over its historic racism. There was a civil war. There was a big civil rights movement. This is the only majority white country that's ever elected a black president, let alone reelected a black president. The three biggest cities in America are...
Well, let's just let that wash over you. The only majority white country in the world ever to elect a black president. And, you know, if we're keeping it 100, there is there is an outside chance that we could get an Indian American president with Vivek Ramaswamy. If not in 2024, if Donald Trump wins and Vivek ends up being the vice, I can tell you right now, ain't nobody stopping Vivek. It's Vivek 2028, like in Reagan-style landslide, slaughter everyone type deal, okay? So just put that out there. And would that happen anywhere else? You think a black person can get elected in Japan? You think a black person can get elected in China? Matter of fact, China is more racist than any place. You think a black person get elected in Italy? How about Germany? Not so much.
New York, Chicago, LA, they all have black mayors, even though no city has a majority of black population. The president of Harvard is a black female. Martin Luther King in 1966, Charlemagne, gave an interview to the BBC. This is 2 years after the Civil Rights Act of 64 got passed.
I just got to say, you got to, Larry Elder is impressive. Look at how fluently he rattles these facts off. He's not talking in generalities. 1966. He's talking about Martin Luther King. He's talking about the 3 biggest cities in the country, all black mayors. He's talking about, even though none of those cities are majority black, he's talking about. Watch how he runs this stuff off, and this is what I'm saying. This is like a bear mauling a bunch of little kids. The Breakfast Club is not worthy. Okay.
And he said, I'm amazed at how many positive changes there have been in America in the last 2 years. Why, if things keep going like this,
since
we could have a
1964,
black president in about 40 years' time. Do the math. Right on cue, Barack Obama elected 2008. He didn't say there'll be a black female president of Harvard, and there has been. Yes. He didn't say there are going to be black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and there have been several. He didn't say the percentage of the House would equal the percentage of black people in the population, and it does. He didn't say the 3 largest cities would have black mayors, and they do. He didn't say the largest and most prestigious organization of doctors, the American Medical Association, would have 2 black presidents, and there have been. He didn't say the most prestigious organization of lawyers, the American Bar Association, would have 2 black presidents, and they have. He said president, meaning at that point, I can feel that I've reached the mountaintop, which is the speech he gave right before he got assassinated the day before. And now we act as if Barack Obama never even got elected, and we're still talking about systemic racism.
That barrage of factoids was an absolutely brutal tsunami of idiocy, destruction. Right? This was a knowledge tornado swallowing up a little rickety shack of ignorance. You know how many of those things he said I didn't know? President of the Medical Association, president of the Bar, Fortune 500 companies, blah, blah, blah. I didn't know a lot of that. Well, I know the Fortune 500 companies, right? But a black person has been the head of every meaningful institution, a meaningful, prestigious institution in this country, despite being underrepresented by, with respect to population by, say, I don't know, 4-fold. White people are 4 times the population of black people in this country, 13 to 60%. And yet, black people are ascending into every stratosphere of leadership in every major institution. And we're still talking about systemic racism.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
What are these people talking about? All right, let's listen.
It's not fair. It's wrong. And you're discouraging black people from working hard. 1990s.
Okay. Mr. Elder, a quick question. Let's just remove the word racism, since that seems to be a word that triggers,
Okay, now I gotta just say, this lady right here is the GOAT of dumb and irrelevant comments. I'm sorry, I have to be mean. She is the GOAT of dumb and irrelevant comments. Let's observe the sheesh. Okay, let's go ahead.
A conversation down the water hole. Let's just focus on the word system.
Okay.
You mentioned that the system was the one that discouraged. And again, we have no problem with agreeing that the family, the black family, should certainly has some room for some improvement. But let's just focus on system.
Room for improvement?
System. Well, we're not going to go down that water. We're not going to go down that water hole. Let's get to the question. So the question is, you said that the system encouraged black women to be single mothers, correct?
I said the welfare state, yes.
The welfare, the system. So who's in charge of the system? Who was in charge of the system?
Well, it was Democrats that passed it.
And who were Democrats? Were they black or white at that time?
Well, at the time, majority of black people were Democrats, as the majority of black people are Democrats now.
Not the voters. I'm talking about the system. Remember, the main idea is the word system. Who was in charge of the system at the time? The Democrats at the time, the system. I'm just going to Charlamagne's point about white or black. Was it white Democrats in charge of the system or black Democrats in charge of the system?
Well, if you're prepared to say that Lyndon Johnson did this viciously with an intent to destroy the black family, I disagree. He did it with the best of intentions. And if you look at the New York Times, which is left wing, the Washington Post, which is left wing, they cheered all of this.
Right. And what I'm asking was it white people? So I'm going to ask again in case my mic's not coming through clearly. Was it white people in charge of the system or black people in charge of that system that helped break down the black family? It's a simple yes, just a simple question. Why?
This is a simple question. It's just a simple question. Oh, dear Lord. Why is this chick? Why is she on my computer screen? She might be the dumbest. I'm sorry, I have to be mean. Let's just break down what this person is saying. Yeah, it's just a simple question. It's just a simple question. What's the system? She's saying that the system, apparently she thinks that we live in some sort of monarchy or dictatorship. Because I don't know if she understands this, but black people have been able to vote, and they voted for the very people who put these policies in place even back then. The people, Teslin, whatever your name is, are a part of this system. You dodo brain. I don't understand. I don't understand how these people are this ignorant. And this is the thing. Okay, the Breakfast Club, she tries to do this condescending bullying thing that she did with Vivek Ramaswamy. And I had a poll earlier in the community where I asked, who do you think did better on this debate on the Breakfast Club? Was Vivek Ramaswamy or Larry Elder? And I personally think it was Larry Elder because, see, Larry Elder is cut from a different cloth, right? And I think Vivek Ramaswamy is too nice, not saying nice, but he's too polite to respond with the same sort of ignorant rudeness and condescension as this ghetto bird right here. She is completely out of her depths. She's making a completely moronic and irrelevant point about the people being white. He's trying to get to the substance of the issue, which is to say, if you're implying that white people intentionally sabotaged the black community by introducing legislation that would erode the social fabric of the black community, he's saying that wasn't their intention, because that, in effect, is at its root what racism would be, right? Is when you intentionally hamper and hinder the progress of certain people based on their race. So if the idea was that they knew that this would actually erode the black community and that they introduced it for that purpose, then you could say, well, okay, well, white people messed it up. But here's the thing, Ghetto Bird. I'm going to call this girl Ghetto Bird because I don't really know her name and I don't care to know it because she's just not a smart person. Here she is making a point when, talking about the system, white people voted for the system too, in the sense that they themselves were also a part and partakers of the system, and they voted for some of these people who enacted these policies. So unless you're saying, well, white people sabotaged themselves. So the fact that they were white, there were actually a lot of black people and a lot of black civil rights leaders, and still to this day, black civil rights leaders advocating the policies that she's trying to take a dump on because she thinks it's some sort of win by showing that white people messed it up. Black people vote for this crap still today. This is like the biggest self-own I've ever seen. Okay, I'm on this rant. Let me let the ghetto bird talk.
White or black?
Well, you didn't have to go on welfare unless you voluntarily chose to go on welfare. The inducement was put there by Democrats, by the left.
Correct. Okay. White Democrats.
Well, most black people were.
She thinks she's making some salient point. Oh, it was white people. Okay, I just want to make it was white people. It was white people.
Democrats, and they voted for these white people.
Not voters. I said who's in charge of the system.
Well,
notice again, she's trying to dismiss the fact that voters are a part of the system, moron. Oh gosh, I need to calm down.
Who put them in charge?
Was Lyndon Johnson white or black?
Who put them in charge?
Maybe that'll help you.
Fine, Lyndon Johnson was white.
Thank you.
Okay, but if your argument.
She thinks she's making. She thought she. Oh, was he white? Oh, thank you. What did you prove?
And is
I can't.
that the reason he did it is because of racism? Then I
No.
disagree. He did it because of
That's not my argument. I just asked you a simple question. Was he white or black? Charlamagne?
And Mr. Elder, you said you talked about the smash and grabs, right? And I find that interesting because
Oh,
you
Lord.
see the mass shootings that happen. Majority of those people are white males. What do you think about that?
Actually, if you look at the percentage of whites in America, which is 60%, the percentage of mass shooters is under that. The percentage of people that commit hate crime is under that. The percentage of people who are serial killers is under that. Black people are 13% of the population. We commit a greater percentage compared to that
But no,
of
you
mass
specifically
shootings.
talked about the smash and grabs, though. So I was saying, since you're using that as an example, I'm saying, well, what about the mass shooters that are usually white males?
One more time. They are usually white males because 60% of the country is white. However, they underrepresent in terms of the number of mass shootings. About 50% or so of the mass shootings in this country are committed by white people, even though white people are 60% of the population. They underrepresent. We overrepresent when it comes to hate crime, when it comes to mass shootings, when it comes to serial killings, when it comes to robberies, when it comes to virtually every category of violent crime. We overrepresent.
So
Okay, now see. So let me just interject something here. Larry Elder is right, but I am generally uncomfortable with this line of reasoning, right? Because now note that Larry Elder didn't actually turn the conversation in this direction. They did. Because when Larry Elder started to make the point that we need to repair the nuclear family, that we need to strengthen the social fabric of the black community by getting fathers back in the home, they took that as well, you taking shots at black people. I just have to say, man, this is why if you're a black watching this right here, and you are sympathetic to this line of reasoning and this sort of attitude that you see these people on the Breakfast Club have, I will say this is why we can't have nice things. This is why we can't make progress. This isn't about who's doing the most wrong, who can one up the other. Race, on the one hand, we will say race is a social construct, and then on the other hand, we sitting there comparing and contrasting on the basis of race like that freaking matters. I don't think that we actually want to go down the road of comparing and contrasting who's better at what specific metric, because in a lot of those metrics, we're going to be the ones looking stupid. But what does it mean? What does it say about the inherent nature of black people if it is the case that we overrepresent in every violent crime? What does that mean about black people? What does it say about the inherent nature of black people? It doesn't say anything. It does say something about the social fabric of black people. It does say something about the culture. It does say something about our current state that, thank God, is mutable. And that means we can change it. That means we can make progress if we address the specific things that are holding us down. If this becomes about black skin and white skin and about the inherent nature of people, because this is what they want to imply. Well, white people do this stuff because that's who they are. Is that what they're trying to say? If that's not what they're trying to say, then they're making an irrelevant point. And the fact that these behaviors or these cultural artifacts, the fact that they are not immutable the fact that they're not immutable should be something that we all celebrate, because that means we can change them. Right? We are not talking about what is inherent to our black skin or our white skin. What we're talking about is cultural markers. I just want to interject just one other thing here, because I think this is important to understand. We're talking about the state of black people at a specific point in time, at a specific place in the world. Where black people are now is not even where we were 60, 70 years ago. 60, 70 years ago, the black community, all of these markers that we talk about, the violence, the crime, the erosion of the black family, none of that described black people. You go back to even further, you go back to black people in their native lands. There was nothing inherently There's nothing about the current, rot of American black culture that we see, where you got Sexy Red talking about Pound Town, and you're talking about these little girls talking about, doing 304 work, right? And being baby mamas, and dudes in and out of jail, selling drugs, can't read at grade level. No matter, we got, in Baltimore County, there's like 0 kids in high school that can read at grade level. That has nothing to do with the inherent state of black people. That's talking about where black people are right now in this specific point in time. And as we think about the Bible, we see that Israel had different, but that's why we have the record of the Old Testament, where we see where Israel at one point in time, they were a bunch of idolatrous, evil, wicked, rebellious, stiff-necked people. And at other times, they were doing other things. But none of those specific slices in time inherently characterize all of Israel for all of time. And this seems to be something that black people in America can't seem to understand, because we're brainwashed by Democrat leftist ideas that want to keep the racial tension alive. All right, so, dear Lord, I had to go on that rant, because this sort of moronic mentality that we see on the Breakfast Club needs to be addressed, and it needs to be moved away from. Let's listen further. I don't know if we're going to get through all this, because it could take us 3 hours, but hang in there with your boy.
What white people do wrong? I'm gonna keep asking you that, because I want.
It seems to me, rather than deal with what's going on, the pathology that's going on in the inner city, you want me to talk about how bad white people are, which I don't think is a particularly productive thing to do.
Well, I think there's a cause and effect, but if we can't talk about the cause, which I believe is systemic racism and white supremacy, the FBI says.
Well, I just told you, if it's systemic racism, please explain to me how it was when America really had systemic racism in 1940. 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Again, this is during Jim Crow era. My father is from Athens, Georgia, grew up in Jim Crow. My mom is...
Note, these are actual facts.
From Huntsville, Alabama, grew up in Jim Crow. 87% of blacks live below the poverty line. This is before Brown versus Board of Education. You did not find these kind of black on black crime.
Probably because we had no
choice. But they still were living
ourselves.
Below the poverty line, though, sir.
I'm sorry?
You're forgetting the fact that they were still living below the poverty line. You're picking and choosing, saying this was good, but this was bad.
Okay.
The bottom line, they end between the poverty line. But let's move forward.
Can I just address that? In 1940, 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line.
In 1940, 80% of the... He's got these facts at his beck and call. Has anybody on the Breakfast Club presented a single fact with any sort of specificity? We're like 12 minutes into the video. Have they done it one time? I don't think so.
1960, that number had fallen to 47%. That's a 40-point drop in 20 years. That's the greatest 20-year period of economic expansion for black people in the history of America. Again, well before Brown versus Board of Education, well before the KKK imploded, well before we had race-based preferences. Why? Because it was rare for a black kid to be raised in a family without a father in the home. A strong belief in Judeo-Christian values, a belief in patriotism, even as America wasn't applying these values to black people, obviously, and a belief in entrepreneurship. All those things are now under assault by organizations like Black Lives Matter. Charlemagne, Black Lives Matter had on their website an attack on the nuclear family. The founders are self-described Marxists, trained Marxists. Marx wanted to dethrone God, was an atheist, and Marx did not believe in capitalism, let alone entrepreneurship. All the things that made black people still survive in virulent racism are now under attack by organizations like Black Lives Matter.
All of those things have always been under attack by white supremacy. You can go back to things like whether it's the Tulsa race matter.
Once again, Larry Elder with an absolute barrage of ignorance-busting facts. And Charlemagne the Fraud says, there's always been under attack by white supremacy. Is Black Lives Matter white supremacy? Is he even listening? He's obviously not listening. I personally, I got to tell you, I don't understand why these people, why Vivek Ramaswamy and Larry, well, I don't even understand why Larry Elder does. I think I know why he does it. I feel his pain because quite frankly, sometimes I talk to my friends and they say the most irrational things, but you got to keep trying.
massacres. Like every time black people do create these systems that are our systems, and we are the entrepreneurs.
Black people created capitalism.
It seems like white supremacy finds a way to destroy it.
Every time. Look, the Tulsa massacre, within about 5 years, that whole area was rebuilt. It was not even called the Black Wall Street until after it was rebuilt. And it was rebuilt, by the way, by black people without one dime of government money.
I didn't know that. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see why I titled this live stream Larry Elder beats the Breakfast Club senseless with facts and logic? I mean, literally, this is like Jordan playing in Little League basketball. I don't even, if these people had any humility, they would stop talking and say, Mr. Elder, can you help us understand, of your 40 years of doing this on the radio for like 3 hours a day, you got all these facts at your beck and call. We obviously don't know what the heck we're talking about. Can you help us understand how we can be better and be less of a drag on our community by providing a bunch of excuses for black failure? But they don't have that. It's crazy. These people think they understand politics and how societies are built because you play, I don't know what, because you play Nicki Minaj every morning?
Yeah, but who destroyed it to begin with?
It was racists who destroyed it. No question about it. We've had race riots, but so have Japanese.
So you do agree that there's racism? I'm just so confused.
You know, I never even came close to saying. I never came close to saying there was no racism.
You just saying you don't think it's systemic racism?
Not anymore. Obviously, there was. We had something called slavery. We had something called Jim Crow.
That destroyed black. Hold on, sir. That was system that destroyed. That was the system that destroyed Black Wall Street. It's the same system right now that's not even willing to pay those same living descendants. Because I know your position on reparations, but those same living descendants of Black Wall Street.
Okay.
And then you move, and then you go on to say that the system, the quote unquote system, is also trying to destroy President Trump. So I'm just so confused on: do you believe that the system can destroy or not? You pick and choose, sir, and that's what's so confusing to me.
I mean, this is like a 10-year-old's logic. He never said that a system can't destroy anyone. He said there is not any systemic racism anymore.
You just said it wasn't racism. Now it is racism. When it was time to build it back, there was no racism.
I said it wasn't systemic racism. Let's talk about.
So what are you just hung up on the word system?
Can I just make this?
And this is the difference between Larry Elder and Vivek Ramaswamy, is because the ghetto bird just tried to dominate by talking over, and then, DJ Envy was simping because, she was making an idiotic point, and then when Vivek tried to get a word in, he was just like, "Oh, you talking over her, sir. You talking over her." But Envy, he dare not. Envy don't even want to get in there because everybody that throws something at Larry Elder, he just smacks it away like gorilla swatting at a gnat, right? And so Envy don't even want no smoke right now. He's trying to figure out. He's like double dutch, trying when to jump in. But anyway,
at this point, Charlamagne, please. Let's take Chinese Americans. Chinese Americans were the first ethnic group to be excluded with an Immigration Act in the late 1800s. They had riots against Chinese in L.A., in San Francisco. There were laws that prevented Chinese Americans from participating in the laundry business. I'm in California. California, of course, rounded up Japanese Americans during World War II. There were laws that prevented Japanese Americans from owning farmland. The average Japanese American household has a higher per capita income than the average white household. The average Chinese American household has a higher per capita income than the average white household. How does that happen? It happens because of a strong belief in family. It is rare for a Chinese American or a Japanese American kid to have a child outside of wedlock, and a strong belief in education and a strong belief in entrepreneurship. These are the kinds of qualities that make people successful.
You can't blame everything on having a fatherless family, right? Because
Do these people understand the difference between something being a primary cause and being the only cause? Apparently they do not. He's not blaming everything on that. He's saying that that is the primary cause. You know what the rate of single parenthood households are for Asian Americans? It's in the single digits. Those people always get married and stay married before they have kids. That's why they're winning. Oh, and by the way, they don't generally marry Americans, which is probably really smart.
I didn't say blaming everything.
I know, but that's what you're saying. You're saying a strong community. But
no, you said that's what I just said. I didn't say that.
You talk about the Asian community. Asian community, it's easy for them to get loans for entrepreneurship. It's easy for them to get loans for houses. You look at our community.
Okay.
If you really want to talk about our community, right? You look at the schools in our community. Some of our schools.
Notice when Larry Elder talks, he says, such and such percent of people at this specific time did this, and then this happened. Look at the specificity. Look at Envy's like, it's easier for Asian people to get loans. They get loans easier. Could you be more specific, Envy?
Schools are the worst, right? Would you agree with that? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Which is why
one of the reasons I'm running for president is for school choice.
Also, would you say that it's in our community is
systemic?
It's also in our community is heavy food deserts. There's nothing but fast food places that are just killing and destroying that. Would you say that's true?
Systemic too. By the way.
Boy, you mentioned.
Oh, Larry Elder's like, boy. He just like marveling at the barrage of dumbness that came from there. But I got a comment here I want to read by Ducky Momo. Ducky Momo, I wonder if Charlemagne grew up with a dad. That's a good question. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if he grew up with a dad. I know he's from South Carolina. I think his dad actually was in his home, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a good question. All right, let's continue.
Hey, that's true. I'm just asking a question.
You said a number of things. I just addressed one of them about loans.
Mm-hmm.
In 1965,
I'm telling you, man, Larry Elder is 71 years old. Every single time he starts a sentence, he is time stamping it. And 1965, sheesh. This guy is an encyclopedia of facts. They should have known better than to mess with this guy.
Barack Obama, who was in private practice, joined a bunch of other lawyers to file a class action lawsuit against Citicorp.
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe there was 1995. What did he say? Let me go back.
Private practice. In 1965.
He did say 1965. Maybe
Barack
he
Obama,
misspoke.
who was in private practice.
Barack Obama. So I think he misspoke there.
Joined a bunch of other lawyers to file a class action lawsuit against Citicorp, which is headquartered here in New York. 186 black people were applying for loans for mortgages. They didn't get them. And they accused Citicorp of engaging in racism. Mm-hmm. Citicorp said, no, it's not racism. You have poor credit scores, and we want to make sure we get our money back. Obama joined a bunch of other lawyers, and they sued Citicorp in a class action lawsuit. And Citicorp said, okay, to hell with it. Gave them all loans. And they followed them all up. Daily Caller did a few years later. Almost all of them lost their homes. Several of them filed for bankruptcy. One of them even said, when you don't qualify for a loan, maybe we shouldn't get a loan. Well, duh. It wasn't true that black people were not getting loans. Plus, there are all sorts of black-owned community banks around the country, and it turns out the turn-down rate when you apply for a loan at a black community bank was even higher because they had less capital and they couldn't afford to loan money to risky people.
Bruh.
That's a fact. Most people don't know that black-owned banks turn down black applicants at a higher rate than white-owned banks. That's a stat that I heard from Thomas Sowell and also hear from Larry Elder. But Larry Elder adds some details that I couldn't understand why that was, but he's going to explain why.
People. It is just not the case that the reason for the plight of the black community is because people were not lending money to them. It's just not true.
That's not true. But hold on one second, Charlemagne. But see,
what's not true?
You're bringing back facts of 1965, right? Let's talk 2023, right?
I said 1995.
1995.
He didn't say 1995, but that's what he meant.
If I would talk 2023, right? My son will be successful in real estate and successful in buying a house. You know why? Because his father owns his house. Because his father owns a house, right? But my father
because of you and the drive you put into him.
Not own own houses.
Because of you and the drive you put into them.
We're not going to have a conversation.
You're not even appreciating what you've done to your son.
I'm just asking you a question. I just let you speak and I'll let you talk.
Okay.
Y'all can talk.
We have a conversation.
All right.
But when we talk about it, right, it's harder for our community to get loans, right? And not just because of poor credit scores. It's because of where the areas are. You talked about the Asian community. A lot of the Asian community have their own banks and they're able to process and get their own banks. There's not too many African American branches that are able to give out money. So that's one. Then let's talk about getting grants for schools. They're not even giving grants for schools at the rate that they're giving grants for white people. And let's talk about when they talk about entrepreneurship. They are giving so much money to these white and Asian kids and Asian people doing it, and a 1,000 times less than our community. Will you agree to any of that?
No, I don't. I don't agree with virtually any of what you just now said.
It was like, nope. Wrong.
The turn down rate for a white applicant for a mortgage is higher than the turn down rate for a Japanese or a Chinese applicant for a mortgage. Now, are you telling me that banks are discriminating against white and in favor of Asian Americans? It's because their credit scores are better. They often live below their means. They save more, even when they're making the same amount of money than black people do. If you have poor credit score, you're not going to get a loan. Period. End of statement. Even the head of Urban League, a black man once said that if you have poor credit score, you're not going to get a loan. End of statement.
Sir,
yes.
let's just When you were talking about crime,
Here come the
you
ghetto
weren't prepared
bird.
to talk about disproportion. You talked about how it was more black people that was doing it, and then you talked about how we're the smaller, of the population. The same applies also to the loans. It's more white people than it is black people. You seem to pick and choose.
I'm talking about the rate.
I'm
talking about the rate.
Whatever it is, the bottom.
Look at it. First she starts saying, oh, well, you're talking about white people because there's more white people. Then he goes, no, I'm talking about the rate. Oh, well, whatever. Well, then your whole point's negated.
Bottom line is it's more white people than it is black people. And so if more black people are not getting loans disproportionately, it seems you'd only want to apply the disproportion to the conversation when it benefits your talking point.
I'm not sure you understood.
Which is why they said.
I'm not sure you understood.
No, understood.
I'm not sure you understood
No,
my
you
point.
don't.
That's why I mentioned in 1995 when 186 black people who were not getting loans filed a class action lawsuit claiming that they were denied the loan because of racism. Citicorp said, okay, here are your loans. The reason I wasn't giving you the loans is because we're afraid you weren't going to be able to pay them back.
I'm not talking about
Fast forward,
sir.
they weren't able to pay them back, which proved the Citicorp point.
I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about
I know
that.
you're
I'm
not,
talking about your
because
response.
inconvenient.
I'm talking about your response to Envy when you said more white people get approved for loans.
Since you like
I'm not
numbers,
talking about
Washington Post said black Americans have the highest denial rates for purchase and refinance of loans, according to Home Mortgage Disclosures Act.
Because of their credit
black,
score.
And all credit scores are the same. 15% of Hispanic loan applicants were denied, compared with about 11% of white and 10% of Asian applicants with same.
All right, so let me first of all, I haven't seen this far, so I don't know what Larry Elder is going to say. Now, Larry Elder was focusing on the credit score. Okay, let me just explain something to you. My undergrad degree is in finance. I've been working in financial services for 15 years at least. Okay, so my undergrad degree is in finance. I work for a financial services firm or for a brokerage firm. Credit score is not the only consideration. It's not just about credit score. It's about capital. Okay. If you have a lot of, like, let's take somebody with a credit score of 680. One person has cash on hand and savings of $2,000. The other one has cash on hand and savings of $30,000. They have the same credit score, but those are not the same applicants. When they look, when banks and financial institutions look at your credit worthiness, they consider not just your credit score, but your overall liquidity and your capitalization. Do you have assets? Do you have assets that have equity in them? How quickly can you turn those assets into cash? So there's liquid assets, which is, your stocks, your bonds, things that you can turn into cash, in a matter of days. And then there's your illiquid assets. Those are things like your home, real estate, things like that. So Larry Elder is obviously oversimplifying it. Now, he's an attorney, so he doesn't, maybe he knows that, and maybe he doesn't know that particular aspect of credit worthiness. But it's not just about credit scores. And, ironically, whenever people are trying to make the systemic racism case, they always talk about how the average net worth of black people is lower than that of white people. Well, yes, that's right. That's also part of the reason why they get approved for loans less frequently. Okay, let's continue.
Credit scores, and that's Washington Post, since you love numbers so much, and I know you do love numbers. That's coming from the Washington Post. That's 2023, not 1995.
I can show you a study that says the opposite.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Elder. Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and I'm pretty sure everybody who just caught a RICO with him in Georgia, they all had fathers, and they still ended up in jail. How did that happen?
Nobody said.
Hold on a second. Where's my Russell Westbrook, bro? Hold on.
What? Bro, what are you talking about?
What is he talking about? Let's listen.
Nobody said if you have a father, you won't go to jail. Nobody said if you didn't have a father, you were going to jail. My father never.
But guess what you did say, Mr. Elder? I'm sorry, respectfully.
May I answer his question?
Guess what you did say.
May I answer his question?
Let him finish his statement, Ted.
Okay.
My father never.
There again, that's the difference between Vivek Ramaswamy and Larry Elder. Vivek Ramaswamy, when this ghetto bird started to interrupt him and be rude and condescending, Vivek Ramaswamy allowed it. Larry Elder does not. Larry Elder is 71 years old. He's like, looks at the little girl. You're not talking to me like that.
I knew his biological father. He got thrown out of the house when he was 13 years old, 8th grade dropout, Jim Crow South, Athens, Georgia. Fast forward, my dad cleaned toilets, 2 full-time jobs cleaning toilets when I was growing up. Went to night school to get his GED, and then after that, he went to night school to learn how to operate a small restaurant. Age of 47, my dad saved his nickels and dimes from his job, starts a small restaurant near downtown L.A. Fast forward, he retires in his 80s. He owned that restaurant. He owned property next door, plus the house that's still in our family. Not too shabby for somebody who did not know his biological father. It's not a death sentence. You still have choices. It's just much, much more difficult to raise a child on your own. Even Tupac Shakur said, I know for a fact, Tupac, excuse me. I know for a fact, had I had a father, I would have been more confident. I would have been more disciplined. End of quote.
Well, how did all those white men end up in jail when they still had fathers? The Trumps and the Giuliani. I'm just asking the question.
It's called being stupid on purpose. He literally just repeated that idiotic question after he just explained it's not a death sentence. We're talking about, on average, if you're going to predict certain outcomes, we know that a linchpin factor into whether or not you go to prison or you end up in poverty or you end up in other types of dysfunction, the most common factor is fatherlessness. It doesn't mean that it's always that way. Some of you may know this, some of you may not, but I grew up in a single parent home. My mother was a single mother. My mother actually, she did the best she could. She was also, not only was she a single mother, but she was also ill. My brother and I both have a graduate degree. I have a graduate degree in data science. My brother has a graduate degree in education. My sister is a cosmetology instructor. She's married to a pastor. We all have been married. We've only been married once. We're all still married to our first and only spouses, well into a decade plus of being married. My brother's been married for 20 years. I've been married for almost 19 years. My sister's been married for about 16, 17 years or somewhere around there, maybe 18, somewhere around there. She's got 4 kids. We all come from a single parent home, but the difference is that my mother taught us about God, and she gave us an opportunity to flourish, even though our situation was difficult. The point is that not that white people with a dad don't never do anything wrong and black people without a dad are always going to be crooks. No one made that case. So you can tell that this is almost an admission that they're losing the argument. And it's not even supposed to be an argument. It's supposed to be just Larry Elder presenting his point of view. But they are so bent on making this idiotic point rooted in race that they can't let it go. So they keep asking stupid questions.
Question: how did they end up in jail?
Because some people commit crimes.
No, sir. Stop. My apologies for interrupting you earlier. I just couldn't stomach the answer that I knew you were going to say.
Couldn't stomach the answer?
Yeah, I couldn't stomach because your actual answer to Trump being what was happening to him with the indictments, you actually said that the system was doing it. You said there was a two-tier system. This is your words.
That's right.
That it was a two-tier system. So when it came to Trump, all of a sudden you now believe in this systematic thing that's happening to Trump. But then when it happens to black people,
but it's not about race. It's not about race. I
didn't ask you that. I asked you. Remember, I made it easy for you, and I took race out of it. Remember, I said I'm just talking about the system. I'm just talking about the system.
If you want to ask me whether I believe Donald Trump is being treated the same way as Joe Biden and is being treated the same way as Hillary Clinton, all of these people are white. All these people are white. There's a double standard.
Well,
Mr. Elder, you didn't hear my question.
You said that
you didn't hear my question.
You said some people commit crimes, so you do believe that Trump, Giuliani, they committed a crime.
I don't know.
But you just said some people commit crimes.
I said some people committed a crime. I didn't say Donald Trump committed a crime. If you ask me specifically whether I believe Donald Trump committed a crime, I don't.
I don't. Specifically about those people and why they ended up in jail. And they all got fathers.
Well, Donald Trump is not in jail.
Oh, he got indicted.
Yeah, he got indicted. That's a far cry from being in jail.
Why did he get indicted?
Well, he got arrested, is what I'm saying. He's going to get arrested.
He's been
arrested.
He got indicted, in my opinion, because the DOJ has a double standard. They let Hillary pass, for example. She clearly violated the Espionage Act by having an unsecured server in her basement. She paid for the Steele dossier. She destroyed 30,000 emails.
Okay, what is this idiotic girl? What is her point? Nobody ever. I can't listen to this person. I can't listen to this person. I'm probably gonna. You know what we might have to do? We might have to end the stream here because I can't take any more of the ghetto bird. What is the system? What is the system? It's just a simple question. It's just a simple question. It's just a simple question. Was it the system? Was it the white people in charge of the system? It's just a simple question. I cannot deal with this person. I really cannot. Does anybody got anything to say in the chat? I don't know, man. I need a break. You know, maybe let's see if we can get past the ghetto birds. Let's see if we can get it past her question, because now she's trying to make the case that she's trying to say that he never said that systems can cause people to go to be wrongly persecuted or to their progress to be hindered. He never implied anything so stupid. He said that there was systemic racism, but we don't have it anymore. She acts like she can't understand the difference between there never being any sort of systemic issues and that there being different kinds of systemic issues that might shift over time. I don't really, maybe she can't, maybe she's just not smart enough to understand, or maybe it's just that they're so hell bent on trying to catch him. You know, it's really funny. It's almost like the Pharisees, and I'm not comparing Larry Elder to Jesus or anything, but like the Pharisees would ask Jesus these questions, and the whole point of the question was to try to make Jesus look bad. But the problem was that they thought they were smart, but they didn't actually think through their questions. So they would ask a question trying to make Jesus look dumb, and they would end up making themselves look dumb. This is what this reminded me of. Let me see if I can get through this.
That were under subpoena, and she got a wrist slap. And Donald Trump is now being indicted, I think, for the fourth time. It's unfair.
Right.
Black people been telling y'all how corrupt the FBI is for a long time.
And the FBI has been corrupt. There was COINTEL, the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover also wiretapped MLK under Robert Kennedy, a Democrat Attorney General, Malcolm X, lots of things. Right. And I find it interesting how the same people who criticize the FBI historically are now defending the FBI because they're going after Donald Trump.
Oh, we're not defending the FBI.
I didn't say you were. I said some of the same people.
We're just looking and saying, damn, finally.
But what's your thoughts with Florida? And you see that they're trying to take out.
I noticed that the ghetto bird stopped talking because I guess she realized that her point was stupid.
History out of these history books and not trying to teach our history. What's your thoughts?
I find it interesting that the Democrats are the ones complaining about Florida. This is a party of slavery, party of Jim Crow, the party of the KKK, the party of the Southern Manifesto.
That's a lot of systemic racism.
The party of Dred Scott. the party that I said earlier destroyed the nuclear intact family, and the party that is opposing school choice. And now they want to lecture Florida on making sure the proper history of slavery is taught. I don't know anybody who's defending slavery. Anybody. Not Ron DeSantis. He's not defending.
People benefited from slavery.
Actually, you're talking about one line. You're talking about one line in about 127 pages of the study.
I did a video on this. Go watch it if you want. I did a video on that, so I'm not going to address that.
And it is a line that was repeated almost verbatim in the associated in the advanced placement African American course that the DeSantis administration refused to use because of all the sexual stuff that was in it. It's basically the same thing that was in the advanced placement African American courses, and now because it's in that, all of a sudden the governor is accused of somehow defending slavery. He's not doing anything of the sort.
What did you think about that?
Well, sir, you were actually one that defended slavery. In your comments, you said that, like it or not, slavery was legal in response to reparations. So it's you that was defending slavery, correct?
Defending it and saying that it's illegal are two very different things. Slavery, unfortunately.
That was your response. That was your response into if reparations should happen. So your response to that was, like it or not, slavery was legal, and one would think that was a defense on those who were asking.
Well, you would think it was a defense, but it is not a defense. Unfortunately, slavery has been part and parcel of human history from the very beginning. Asians enslaved Asians, whites enslaved whites, blacks enslaved blacks, Native Americans enslaved Native Americans. This is a culture, the Western civilization, that had a revulsion against it. We had a civil war against it. And we ought to applaud ourselves for doing something about this. This is a flawed country. It's moving forward. It's becoming more perfect all the time. Today, if you are born and raised in America, if you finish high school, presumably one where you can read, write, and compute at grade level, which is why I support school choice, don't have a kid before you're 20, get married first, get a job, keep a job, don't quit it until you get another job, and avoid the criminal justice system, you will not be poor. And if you don't follow that formula, there's a good chance you will be.
You know, the first GOP debate is coming up, and you didn't qualify, and I saw you write.
Well, you didn't say I've not yet qualified. It's not until August 21.
Oh, okay. Well, I saw you writing the op-ed that the Republican National Committee has rigged the rules of the game by instituting a set of criteria that is so onerous. What is it? Onerous.
Onerous.
And poorly designed.
I mispronounced Tupac, so you mispronounced onerous.
That's
so,
right.
so we're even.
You are really petty, Mr.
And you said poorly designed that only establishment and billionaire candidates are guaranteed to be on stage. Explain to us why that system hurts people.
Well, I ran for governor of California. I got 3.5 million votes. It seems to me that made me credible. The RNC is requiring us to have 1% or 40,000 individual donors. In 2020, the DNC required you to have 1% or a certain number of donors. For reasons that I don't quite understand, the RNC is requiring you to have both of them. One of the candidates in this race is a multimillionaire. He's offered a $20 gift certificate if you give $1. Another one is offering a free, air quotes, country western concert if you give $1. Another one is giving you a commission if you are a prospective donor to go out and get other prospective donors. It seems to me that corrupts the whole process. I'm doing it the old-fashioned way, Charlamagne. I'm asking people to support me and go to my website, larryelder.com, and give me at least $1. If I get $1 from 40,000 individuals, I will be up on that stage in Milwaukee on August 23. And when I get up there, game on, hold my beer.
So why is this? Is this system holding you back?
Go ahead.
Would you say it's a system holding you back?
I would say it's unfair. It seems to me this early, the voters ought to decide this. I mean, in 2016, there were 17 or 18 Republican candidates. Now there's 13. Somehow, some way, our republic survived, and we could survive with 13 candidates. I don't know why they have all this rule to eliminate certain people at this point.
Those systems,
but rather than
those systems can hold you back no matter how hard you work, right?
No, I'm going to say, but rather than whine about it, my goal is to get on as many shows as I can, like yours. Urge people to go to larryelder.com, give at least $1, even if you want somebody else. Don't you think it's wise for us to talk about the epidemic of fatherlessness, the lie that America remains systemically racist, and the need for school choice? 13 public high schools in Baltimore, 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Are you kidding me? 53 public high schools in Chicago, 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party...
By the way, like those cities are Democrat from top to bottom at every level and every strata, and black people everywhere. Incompetent, top to bottom.
Party is opposed to school choice, while the party elites, whether it's Barack Obama or Gavin Newsom or Joe Biden, have their own kids in private school. It is wrong, and we need to talk about that.
Larry Elder, why would somebody from our community vote for you, or why should they vote for you?
Hang on a second, Ducky Mo. Joe wrote the 94 crime bill. Ducky Momo, you are correct, sir. We can talk about that for a second here. I think I want to do, there's no way we're going to get through it. We'll be here for 3 hours getting through all of this. But I think we've proven our point here. Hey, let me know. Hey, you guys can put some chats in the some comments in the chat if you think that would be a good idea for us to kind of do the rest of that conversation. I found it fascinating. I had watched a portion of it, and it was I was pretty worked up here today. But the first time I watched it, I thought it was just absolutely hilarious. But yeah, so Ducky Momo, he talked about Joe Biden writing the 94 crime bill. Hey, I have an interesting take on that. I just want to say, I actually think the 94 crime bill was a good thing. A lot of people may not realize that. I actually think it was a good thing. The reason why I think it was a good thing is because, without question, first of all, in the early 90s, crime was at its all-time high. I mean, all-time high. I mean, the black community was decimated with crack cocaine. There was violence everywhere. And not just the black community, just crime in general was just burgeoning. 1994 crime bill was a response to a very specific, basically, kind of an endemic of criminality, and they had to do something about it. And the 1994 crime bill actually provided resources from the federal government to local law enforcement, and they actually took law enforcement from kind of old school, beat cop to more data driven. They provided these systems that allowed police precincts to use data to fight crime, and that was the kind of the onset of what's called proactive policing, broken windows policing. I actually did a brief study on this as my master's kind of capstone project, and actually did kind of an estimate of, I kind of estimated how many lives that were actually saved by the broken windows policing style, and based on the resources provided from the 94 crime bill. So Joe Biden actually gets a bad rap about the 94 crime bill, but the talking point is that, that caused mass incarceration and therefore it was bad, it was racist. I'm sorry, I don't believe that. If we start saying arbitrarily, hey, there's too many X amount of people in prison, or there's too many black people in prison, at any given moment, we're talking about a specific time for a specific group of people, what have you. It might be warranted that many people be in prison. We can't just say, oh, well, so many people are in prison, it must be wrong. It must be. No, not necessarily. If they were criminals, if it improved our society, if it was, if they were breaking the law, and by removing those people from society that allowed our society to recover and to be safe, then there's nothing wrong with that. And so, Ducky Momo, I have to say, though, and that might not be a popular opinion, but, that to me is more than warranted. All right, you know what? It's 9:20. You know what? I'm going to power through. I see a lot of people. I want to watch some more of this. I think we're doing good. I got my second wind here. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving.
Why should a black person vote for you?
Because I'm telling the truth, and the truth oftentimes is unpleasant. It's not pleasant for me to be called the black face of white supremacy, as the LA Times did. It's not pleasant for me to be accused of being anti-black, as Tavis Smiley once called me, because I don't support reparations. By the way, Barack Obama never supported reparations. Nobody called him anti-black. We need to talk about what's going on. What's going on is the breakdown of the family. And most of the things we complain about downstream, whether it's crime or whether it's bad schools, the genesis is the breakdown of the nuclear intact family, and we don't talk enough about it.
Do you agree that our community is hit harder with a lot of things that you just said, whether it is racism, whether it is getting loans, whether it is getting entrepreneurship, whether it is education, whether it is all those things? You do understand that and agree with that, correct?
I do, but much of it is either self-inflicted or because of policies that we have supported. Democrats that we have supported. I wrote a book called, it's coming out in October. It's called As Goes California, My Mission to Rescue the Golden State and Save the Nation. It's about the one-party rule in California. California has supermajorities of Democrats in the Senate and in the House. And as a result, our schools are near the bottom. People are leaving California for the very first time. We have the highest state income tax in the country. The average price of a home in California costs 175% above the national average, all because of these left-wing policies that are hurting the very people, black and brown people living in the inner city, that people on the left claim that they care about.
Do you think slavery was self-inflicted, or do you think Jim Crow segregation?
I want to talk about this here for a second, just briefly, because what he just said obviously is correct. But the thing about Democrats is that Democrats don't, they never take inventory of the fact. 'Cause earlier, Larry Elder talked about how the so-called war on poverty and how it wasn't intentionally a ploy to disrupt the nuclear family and the black community, but that was its impact. That was its effect, right? So he said, well, I think they had the good intentions when they did it. And I was like, okay, I can agree with that. But the problem is that once they realized that it wasn't working, they didn't pull back, and they doubled down and asked for more and more and more of the same, and they exacerbated the problem. This is the problem with the left, is that they don't seem to have any self-awareness. They don't understand, and nor do they accept the fundamental limits that policies and outside influences have on overall outcomes. They think the left believes literally they can create any environment or outcome they want by certain policies. And the fact of the matter is that there are certain things that cannot be circumvented by policy. You cannot circumvent and completely negate the impact of individual choices, of personal character, personal righteousness. The Bible says righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Democrats don't seem to believe that. Democrats always start with the idea that all social ills start from the outside and impose themselves on the individual, when the scripture, the biblical worldview, is that all of our problems stem from the sinful nature of the heart, and it manifests in all of our institutions. So it's inward out versus outward in. And Democrats don't understand that you cannot out policy the state of the human heart. You cannot remove the impacts of poor decision-making and sin, which is inherently destructive and erodes everything that it touches. When people participate in sin, when they participate in unrighteousness, then that's going to have a negative impact on society. So just for example, you take the crime. Democrats swear up and down that crime is a result of poverty. But the truth of the matter is that crime and poverty probably have a common root, which is to say that people who are impoverished in a free society, that's the caveat there, that there's nothing outside actually stopping them, but that they actually are, because of their choices, they are poor. When because of your choices you are poor, then it can be rightly said that crime and poverty actually have the same root, which is a moral issue. People who cut corners, the Bible talks about laziness a lot in Proverbs, laziness and how it's sinful. The sluggard, too lazy, won't even lift his hand to his own mouth to feed himself. The sluggard, always making excuses, saying, "Oh, there's a roaring lion in the street. Sorry, I can't go to work today." Right? These are things that Democrats always say, "Oh, no. It's not that people don't want to work. It's just that there's no opportunities." That's bullcrap. Right? You see people coming from Mexico all the time, doing the jobs that lazy Americans refuse to do. Right? They come over here, they're happy they work all day in the sun. They'll make that little bit of money, but they're out there working. Right? Democrats don't seem to believe that. All right, let's listen further.
Segregation was self-inflicted, or do you think
slavery was self-inflicted? Of course, it wasn't self-inflicted, but there are a lot of people have bloody hands in slavery. Mm-hmm. For example, slavery could not have existed had it not been for African chieftains who were selling black slaves captured in battle or captured through raids and selling them to European and Arab slavers. It could not have existed without that. So everybody has dirty hands here. That's why reparations is such a foolish thing. If you're going to get reparations from the 5% or so of white people that have some sort of generational connection to slavery, and that's all there is, then you need to go back to Africa and get money from African countries that were involved in the slave trade and in the Arab slave trade. And by the way, the Arab slave trade was even worse than the European slave trade. 90% rate of attrition, often making men and women walk on barefoot across the Sahara, and the men were castrated. Only about
okay,
5.
So if they go after the money from the other countries, then would you agree that it would be okay to go after the money from America? Is that your problem with it?
When are you going to stop with this? Everybody has a grievance.
I just asked a simple question.
I'm answering your question. There's no end. There'll be no end to this because slavery has been part of human history from the very beginning.
Okay,
we'll be getting money.
I've let you talk, sir. I've let you talk. And
I like how he doesn't let this idiot just, ask a stupid question and get away with it.
Time I talk, you begin to talk, and then you say, let you finish. So I asked you a very simple question. You said, if you're going to go after it in America, go after it in Africa. So if we all agree to go after it in Africa, will you then agree to go after it in America? It's just a simple question.
No,
yes or no?
No, I won't because it's a waste of time.
It's just a simple question. 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 Gosh, okay.
Time. We ought to be spending our time on education.
Next question.
Okay. You told me that I cut you off. Then I tried to answer your question. You won't let me finish.
Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you. It's a waste of time. We ought to be talking about working hard, investing in ourselves. Right now, as we speak, there are Haitians in Haiti lining up for a lottery to come into this country. Why? Because it is the land of the free and the home of the brave. You can go from nothing to something faster in America than any other country in all of human history. We ought to be talking about that. Let me just, one more point. 1997, Time Magazine and CNN hooked up together to do a poll on what black teenagers and white teenagers felt about racism. Mm-hmm. And both of them were asked, is racism a major problem in America? Both of them said yes. But then Time and CNN asked this question of the black teenagers. Is racism a big problem, a small problem, or no problem in your own daily life? This is 1997. 89% of them said small problem or no problem in my own daily life. In fact, twice as many blacks said failure to take advantage of available opportunities is a bigger problem than racism.
That was 1997.
1997. Look it up.
It's 2023, though.
You think America's more racist now after the election and re-election of Barack Obama than it was in 1997?
Yes, because of the election of MAGA, Donald Trump, 100%.
Okay, I can speak to this directly because I was 18 years old in 1997. So I would have been the prime age. Now I didn't participate in this poll. But you see the stupid, I just can't. All I can say is this. When I was 18 years old, nobody was talking about this racism crap. You know where the racism stuff came in? It came in because Donald J. Trump, I shouldn't even say his name because YouTube, anytime I say him, it's like Voldemort. It's like you say his name and then they lower the reach of your video. He beat the brakes, or I shouldn't say beat the brakes off of, but he beat corrupt Hillary Clinton. And they were so full with venom and anger that they tried, that was their, listen, they've been saying every single GOP candidate has been racist, going back to John McCain and then Mitt Romney. And it's funny because Mitt Romney, they swore up and down he was racist. And then he turned against Barack Obama. It's like they were doing the same thing to you. Same thing with what's his face, John McCain. Every single GOP candidate ever is racist. That's the same playbook. They just happen to hate Donald Trump more because they disrespected him. They swore up and down he wasn't going to win, and then when he won, they were embarrassed.
Yes,
really.
Absolutely.
Well, how is it, Charlamagne, that Donald Trump got 8% of the black vote in 2016? He got 12% in 2020, a 50% increase. He got 20% of the black male vote in 2020. If MAGA is racist, how do you explain that Donald Trump substantially increased the percentage of black votes the Republican Party got?
Sometimes people make poor
So why are you
choices.
running against Trump then, Mr. Elder?
Yeah,
I'm not running against him. I'm running against Biden Harris. Any one of the Republican nominees we have would be better than what we have right now. I'm not running against him. I'm running to put forth the issues I just now mentioned that I've been talking about for the last few minutes.
I want to ask you about that. After 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges, don't you think it would behoove the Republican Party to move on from Donald Trump?
I think that the voters in the primary will make that decision.
What do you think, though?
I have no problem with I thought Donald Trump did an extraordinary job as president, especially for black people. Best economy ever. He did something about the borders. The people that are most hurt because of porous borders are black people living in the inner city, because most of the illegal aliens have little or no education. They end up living in the inner city. They compete against black people with high school or less for jobs. There are about 1 million fewer black people working than who would otherwise be working if it weren't for illegal alien labor. And illegal alien labor, according to a study done by the Civil Rights Commission, puts downward pressure to the tune of almost $2,000 per year on the salaries of black people living in the inner city. And
downward pressure of $2,000 a year of black people living in the inner city. Do you understand how this works? Do you understand that in a market economy, it's all about what the market will bear, and it's all about the competition. It's all about supply and demand. Illegal immigration, even legal immigration of low-skilled workers, puts downward pressure on wages. And people who just have a high school diploma and no other skills, they are competing for those entry-level kind of low-skill or no-skilled jobs. That's how they put downward pressure on the wages. Black people with low skills are being hurt the most by illegal immigration.
Donald Trump gave us the most secure border we ever had. He also supported school choice. He also did the First Step Act, which allowed about 5,000 mostly black men with long criminal sentences, nonviolent, to have their sentences reduced an average of 70 months per. He pardoned Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion. Even Barack Obama didn't do that. He did an extraordinary job for black people.
I think you're innocent until proven guilty, but I feel like President Biden had 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges. President Obama had 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges. Y'all would be telling them that they need to step aside and they shouldn't be running for president.
Well, I wouldn't vote for Barack Obama or for Joe Biden in any case, no matter whether he had indictments or no indictments. I don't vote for tax spend, regulate liberals.
You're a conservative, right? Obviously.
No question.
What initially made you gravitate towards being a conservative?
I think it was my father. My father was a lifelong Republican, and my father always told my brothers and me the following: Democrats want to give you something for nothing. When you try and get something for nothing, you almost always end up getting nothing for something. And my dad, I told you about his background. He told my brothers and me that hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. You cannot control the outcome, Larry, but you are 100% in control of the effort. Before you moan or groan about what somebody did or said to you, go to the nearest mirror, look at it, and ask yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? And finally, Charlemagne, my dad, told my brothers and me this: no matter how hard you work, how good you are, sooner or later, bad stuff is going to happen to you. How you deal with those bad things will tell your mother and me if we raised a man. I wrote a book about my father's life. It's called Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. It's about an 8-hour conversation he and I had, where at the beginning of the conversation, I thought my dad was harsh. I thought he spanked us too often. We had a belt. In those days, from the South, you spank kids. And I thought my dad was way too harsh. And we had an 8-hour conversation, and by the time we ended, my dad got bigger and bigger and bigger, and Larry Elder got smaller and smaller and smaller, and I apologized to him. And it's a book that's changed a lot of people's lives. It's called, as I said, Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. The paperback is called A Lot Like Me. Same book, but it's cheaper.
Can you honestly say this is the Republican Party that you grew up on? This modern-day GOP?
Yes. The Republican Party pretty much has always stood for low taxes, low regulation, peace through strength, not strength through peace, and strong borders, and still does. And when Donald Trump is gone, and he will be gone, even if he gets reelected, the day after he gets reelected, he's a lame duck, the party will still go on. The principles will still go on. However, I do believe that many people in our party have spent and spent and spent, so that Ronald Reagan, my favorite president, when he entered the Oval Office, Charlemagne, when he left, government was bigger. It got bigger under George Herbert Walker Bush. It got bigger under W. It got bigger under Donald Trump. And the only way to restrain spending is with an amendment to the Constitution to fix spending to a certain percentage of the GDP, with exception for war and for natural disaster. Otherwise, we're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Let me use the word unsustainable. That's the word Barack Obama used to describe the so-called entitlements. Unsustainable was a word that Bill Clinton used to describe them. But nothing happens because if you run claiming you're going to reform Social Security or Medicare, the other side is going to accuse you of not caring about the sick, the poor, the elderly, and you are going to lose elections. That's why government gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So we need a law to restrain spending. Otherwise, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And for young people like you, these programs are not going to be there.
Mr. Elder, I know a lot about.
I haven't heard this part, but I just know she's going to she's going to say something stupid. I'm just waiting for her to. What's the over under? Or what's the probability that she is going to that she's going to say something antagonistic that isn't productive? It's going to be condescending and accusatory. Sheesh. Let's see what she says.
Conservatives, and I completely agree about the black family. I don't think anybody here objects to that.
Don't disagree about that at all.
I think when you talk about ideology and then you mix in parties and then personalities, it gets kind of confusing. And, you know, you mentioned yourself not to moan and groan, you know, that as long as you work hard, all is well. And I think where the conflict is coming in is you did moan and groan about how the Republicans treated you. You did moan and groan about
Dude, I thought for 1 second she wasn't going to be a moron. I thought it was like she almost had me fooled because she calmed down. She wasn't turned up. She didn't have this ugly bulldog pit bull. She didn't have that. She didn't have that. You know. My dad left me, and I'm very angry at the world vibe for a second, and then she reverted back to form. Ghetto bird strikes again.
Governor Newsom and, asking for a recall. You did not leave that up to the voters. You are moaning and groaning when it comes to Donald Trump and how he's being treated. So it just seems to be a hypocrisy. And I don't know if the message would land a little bit better if there was some fairness across the board on Democrats and Republicans. I'm an independent, by the way, and I think both parties are trash. And I think all of us here, see both sides. And that's the part that's just not landing for me. There seems to be an unfairness on both sides with you.
Well, not too surprisingly, I don't agree with your analysis. How is it that I did not leave the recall to the voters? What do you mean by that?
What do you?
You said I didn't leave the recall to the voters.
No. I said you moaned and groaned about it. You said it should be recalled, correct? Correct?
I said Gavin Newsom should have been recalled. Yes.
Right. That's moaning and groaning.
Well.
Oh, my Lord. Hang on a second. Hey. Just when I thought this girl could get any dumber. I mean, I thought she hit the bottom. Okay? Do you even understand what a recall is? First of all, the people have to engage and force a recall. There has to be so many signatures, essentially people voting for a recall to happen. Once the recall is engaged, then another candidate can step in and run against him. That's what Larry Elder did. He didn't recall Gavin Newsom. The people did. There were enough people in California that said, we don't like this Gavin Newsom guy. Now, it wasn't enough to get him out of office, but it was enough to trigger a recall action. She apparently doesn't understand that. And in her stupidity, and because she's taken L after L after L, trying to go after Larry Elder. Now she's still trying to get that win. Go ahead and take that L, sweetheart. Go ahead and take it. If you just take that L, if you eat it and keep it moving, then you don't have to take so many. Right? You take the one L, you keep it moving, You keep trying to get that win. It's like somebody at the casino. You know, you lose, you say, all right, double or nothing. You lose again, double or nothing. Lose. You're dealing deeper into the hole. I think we've seen enough. This is why we can't have nice things. Okay. I encourage you, if you want to see the rest of it, there's about maybe 20, 25 minutes left of that. That's about all I can stomach. My wife is telling me that that it's time for me to wrap it up. I'm putting it on her. I'm blaming her. I'm calling her out. I hadn't seen the whole thing, but we could always come back to it. But I think what I'm going to do is what is the point? Let me put a bow on this, and then we'll call it a night. It's 9:45 Central Standard Time. If the people on the Breakfast Club are the sort of people that you find credible, I have to tell you that I don't feel like at this point I honestly I would never go on the Breakfast Club because I personally don't think I would have the restraint. I couldn't deal with that stupid person. I just couldn't deal with her. I would not have the restraint. I just wouldn't. And I just know my limits. So, the Bible says, answer a fool according to his folly. Don't argue with a fool. That's what she is. I would just ignore her. When she asked a question, I would just ignore her. I'm just like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to answer questions from you. I'm just not going to do it. Because I don't respect you. I don't think your questions are genuine. I don't think that you're actually seeking information. Your whole objective is to attack and to belittle and to be condescending. I don't want to dignify that sort of mentality because again, you're not seeking information. When you ask a question, you should be seeking information. And none of her questions were seeking information. They were some sort of attack. I just don't understand why she's on the show. I really don't. But more broadly, this to me speaks to the state of Black America and the fact that presidential candidates are going on the Breakfast Club for whatever reason. People on the Breakfast Club have some sort of sway, some sort of cultural sway. I don't really understand why anyone looks to Charlemagne the Fraud, DJ Envy, which is a terrible name, and the Ghetto Bird, that whose name I don't know. I don't understand why people look to them and their opinions for any sort of guidance. I just don't get it. But I do think that I like how Larry Elder comported himself. He was a fountain of information and facts when they were just a bunch of empty accusations and emotional, black people are you got to stop attacking black people, and until you blame white people and to say that white people are bad, we're not going to listen to you. That's just pure ignorance. And if there's anything that Todd thinks as a channel and as a community is against, is that very thing. All right, friends. I think we're going to call it a night. This has been a marathon run. For those of you who stuck with me, hey, man. Good stuff. Ducky Momo, housing displacement, for sure. Yeah, definitely a lot of displacement. But listen, I appreciate you guys hanging in there, staying there with me. That was brutal. I think you all ought to give yourselves a round of applause for enduring the ghetto bird. I gotta come up with another name, because that one is actually doesn't actually capture how just vile and just nasty that girl is. You know, Donald Trump says, "You're a nasty woman. You're a really nasty person. You know that. You know that. You know. Excuse me. You're a nasty. Excuse me. I'm talking. Excuse me. You're a nasty person. That's a nasty question you just asked." He should have went to Donald Trump, and then that would have calmed her down, I'm sure. All right, friends, I'm gonna get out of here. I appreciate you. Stay tuned because more content coming this weekend. I think this weekend I'm gonna launch my series. God willing, of why everything Democrats believe are wrong. I did a poll on that, and a lot of you said that you would like to see that series, why everything Democrats believe is wrong. I think it'll be compelling, so I hope you can check it out. I'll try to have that episode up maybe on Sunday evening or something around there. But in any case, I appreciate you hanging in there with me. Until next time, friends, God bless you.